again, so many possibilities here, and I feel I have so much to just throw and pass on.
Bring it on.
Let me share some perspectives and yeah, get your point, right? So in cataloging a potential syllabus for training movement, one of the models that we use are the pillars, right? And the pillars are ways in which you can organize collective knowledge and collective experience. So we do have a martial pillar, a dance pillar, a pillar that is labeled object manipulation, and this could be anything from juggling to working with tools. And we have another pillar that is anything interacting with gravity, maybe more like acrobatic, which could also be expressive or utilitarian, functional, however you want to label it.
Mm-hmm.
And then arguably you could have also a somatic type of pillar in there, right? And then the way we use this, generally speaking, is if you take any practice and that you can place it in more than one pillar, then from our perspective of study, it's worth looking at. So if you take something like BJJ, you can clearly put it in the martial pillar. It does have dance components. If you have the gi is used like an object, or arguably if I'm manipulating a partner, that could also potentially be working with an object. And then it's fairly acrobatic. You see where this is heading, right? Mm-hmm. And then in my own personal work, I've been trying to relate that to the aesthetic psychology principles with the elements. Mm-hmm. And also potentially the quadruple or magnet. This is something that I haven't shared with anyone yet, and I'm just throwing it out there because I would like to pick your brain on this and what you could see being done with this as well. From the idea you just mentioned that hermetics can be applied to anything essentially.
Alrighty.
As in, if you were to catalog different aspects of movement, right? Mm-hmm. How would you relate that into balancing the elements, for instance? Mm-hmm. If it's purely from a movement learning or practicing perspective, right? Like purely movement, because we could bring in other activities that maybe we would not label as movement training in terms of balancing the elements, but just purely from a movement training from the perspective that we've discussed. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on balancing, or like also using this on top of this model that I was sharing with you? Because I don't necessarily would say martial, it's fire. Mm-hmm. Or I wouldn't just say that dance would be like water element, for example. Mm-hmm. Right? Although you could, right? But yeah, I just wondered.
Okay, so we had martial arts, dance, object manipulation, and what was the fourth one?
Interacting with gravity, like acrobatics.
Interacting with gravity. And was there a fifth one?
Somatics.
Somatics. Okay. I'm gonna forget those. But you can't think of any activity that isn't all of them. Anyone who's developed in martial arts can be sitting there breathing, practicing martial arts. Maybe they're tuning their connective tissue system to a certain frequency. They might be visualizing something. They don't necessarily have to be moving. Anything that we do is in ourselves is object manipulation. If you're breathing, there's stuff that's moving. There's these objects that are moving. Now, how much you attach to the identity of that being you, or you being something else, your point of reference or finding, will determine the degree to which it's an object or not. So from how you described it, I would say that it's all there. If you break down what martial arts is or what dance is, so much of dance is hidden martial arts so that it can be kind of worked on in disguise. Right.
So let me interrupt for a second.
Please do.
So on that being said, would you add to it like layering as well within the map and the prospect of the elements to see each and every single one of those pillars vitally, astrally, mentally?
I would look at each of those pillars as something that you can explore and harmonize all four elements in, and that you can explore and harmonize all four elements in within each layer of vital, astral, mental, and beyond. So that would be like 12 if you use four elements with vital, astral, mental. And then the harmonization of that, or finding that equanimity, like you mentioned, or the magical equilibrium where you have that balanced. Because any of those things can all be pathways to mastery, however you view that. So, I mean, that's like the simple answer. I think to really separate those things, it's all somatics. There's somatics as a part of every single one of those. Dance, if we look at dance as an expression of connection to usually music, and then often other people, that's something that applies to everything, whether that's connection to objects, connection to gravity. You connect, you start to feel those waves of gravity passing through you. Connection with your partner, if it's martial arts. And you go through each of those, pillars. It's one thing, from how I understand it when I hear it. So then looking at exploring the elements within each one, what does it mean to be fire and martial? What does it mean to explore the water element with the martial exploration? To explore earth expressions? To explore air expressions? In dance, in object manipulation, in gravity explorations, and in the other one, somatics. And I think if you start looking at those four elements in relation to each pillar, you start to notice that same, all same. To borrow from our mutual friend Steve Smith, and what one of his teachers, folk used to say, by all accounts, was same, all same. And there's something to that effect. And then once you've explored what it means to, say, dance with a fire astral expression, or a fiery vitality in your body, or a fiery mental type of framework, and a watery one, and an earthen one, and an air-like one, and you start to find an equanimity within that, and you've explored those elements in the frameworks of those layers of energy of vital, astral, mental, you can start to find equanimity vitally, astrally, mentally. And once you have that equanimity, then you can explore each of those pillars totally free. Because we all have ideas of what something's supposed to be. How you engage mentally with martial arts. Maybe it's initially people are really aggressive, really fiery, very aggressive. Eventually, they often become quite earthy, just very still. And people are like, oh, how do I get in on this guy? You don't even have your, guy doesn't have his hands up. But people are like, oh, what do I do here? Or maybe they have an equalized fire. And you're like, oh, if I do anything, it's not like I can move and try to figure out how I get in, but if I do anything, I'm getting smashed. Maybe they have more of a watery thing where you're like, oh, I'm gonna get sucked into something. If I move, I feel I'm gonna get sucked in. Maybe it's real airy. It's that kind of fiery, airy, bouncing around Taekwondo, like Muay Thai, like movement. But once you've explored each of those, at each of those layers as well, then you can find equanimity, and it can give you choice in expression. If you're dancing, choice in expression is pretty important, because that's what you're doing. is you're expressing, whether it's a story, you often dance is expressing a story, or if it's partner dancing, usually it's expressing some type of mating ritual. And I mean, you have dance, martial arts, meditation, being, path of like death, path of life, dance, procreation, and that meditative thing that's like, what the hell is that? That thing that's neither of those, but both of those, that stillness point. And everything slots into it all. But when you look like humanistically at I don't know what you might call it, like trends of human behavior, war and dance, music we could include in dance. Those are pretty old patterns, and probably older than object manipulation. Definitely not older than gravity. So I have to lump that one in there. And somatics you throw in there, but I don't know if awareness of somatics would be in there. But obviously it's a part of dance and of any type of mating and any type of fighting. So point being, it gives you choice in expression, and it gives you choice based off of not being wrapped up in only one pattern of action, feeling, and thought. And so I think that's a pretty holistic way to look at how you might apply the elemental framework, not in separating each of those pillars into one element, but using each pillar as a means of attaining equilibrium in all of the elements at all layers.
So much to unfold here.